Welcome to another dull episode after our awesome episode the other day with Gavin Robertson, which I've just finished listening to now. And man, the insights into cricket when you talk to an actual cricket player was amazing.
Yeah, it was good fun, wasn't it? We had a really good chat with Gavin. Very, very insightful, very engaging man. I just found the whole thing was really interesting. I was just on the edge of my seat the whole podcast, to be honest. Great podcast, worth giving it a listen if you haven't yet.
Definitely, especially not even just for cricket fans, because he gives a lot of insights on just being a high-performance athlete, basically, and the way people should approach thinking about things when you are in those situations. Like, I deal with a lot of people who want to be full-time athletes in the jiu-jitsu and MMA space, and one of the things I always talk to them about and that I studied is mindset and understanding and belief and envisioning things that you need to do and having the confidence, like Gavin said, just go for it when you know you've got to make a change. It was really, really good. Yeah,
talking to him about, how when he bowled to Sachin Tendulkar, and there was we got onto a whole wide range of subjects, so certainly worth having a listen or having a watch.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
But this is mainly Rugby League, so we should talk Rugby League.
Yes.
Kicking off tonight, there's now who would have thought this? 5th place Storm, I thought that, Dan didn't, versus the 12th place Broncos, which nobody thought. Quick elite bet odds check with Melbourne being the heavy favourites at $1.46 and the Broncos at $2.76. That for the win. It is in Melbourne. Yes, it is at Amy Park in Melbourne. So big news for Melbourne. Cameron Munster is back.
Back from a groin injury. Jerome Hughes back from suspension, and Christian Welch back on deck as well, recovering after that concussion. So that means Tyron Wishart goes to the bench with Jack Howarth named as 18th man for the Storm. For the Broncos, not a whole lot of movement on the team front, just the one change to that team that beat the Cowboys. Young forward Ben Tikura named to make his NRL debut off the bench after being 18th man last week. He comes in for Xavier Willison, who'll miss the game after suffering a head knock at training. Marty Tapau is the 18th man for them.
When you look through those teams, well, Ryan Pappenhausen, Cameron Munster, Jerome Hughes, Harry Grant, Nick Meaney, Xavier Coates, Tyron Wishart, Christian Welch, Elisa Katoa, Sean Blaw up against Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam. Payne Haas is still out for the Broncos.
Same with Reece Walsh.
Yeah, Reece Walsh is out for the Broncos. Broncos had to fight an uphill battle last week and nobody tipped them. Literally no one in none of our experts tipped them. We all tipped the Cowboys and they managed to get up. And this is another unassailable one. As you said, they haven't made a change to their team except for one that was required by a head knock in training, because why would they after beating top number one place Cowboys?
Yeah, absolutely. Melbourne have got the wood over the Broncos, though. They won 14 of their last 15 against them, so that's a big start in Melbourne's favour. Broncos also haven't won at Amy Park since 2016 as well.
Wow.
That's a fair drought. The Storm are aiming for their 12th consecutive win at Amy Park. In fact, the only Broncos players who've won in Melbourne are Corey Oates and Tyson Smoothie. So there you go. And if you are looking at a try scorer, a bet on a try scorer, Storm winger Xavier Coates has scored 24 tries in 20 games at Amy Park, and of course you could forget that try he scored against the Warriors only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, of course he's going to score. He'll do whatever he can. He'll even make a leap from 6 metres out to score if he has to. I can't go past Melbourne on this one. Sorry to the Broncos, even though it's the same kind of situation as last week. In Melbourne, that stat is pretty damning that they've only won once in
15 games.
Yeah, 15 games. Storm have had the wood over the Broncos for a long, long time, as far back as 2007, I think. As the Broncos beat Melbourne in the 2006
grand final.
Yeah, and then they were winning in 2007 to make a second grand final appearance, and Melbourne knocked them out in the last minute or so. The anguish on Darren Lockyer's face sticks in my head. I think it was Greg Inglis sliced through the line, and Darren Lockyer's just going, no!
And there's an interesting side note to that season now, with the Storm having been since caught cheating the salary cap and stripped of that premiership.
The Broncos would have got 2 in a row. You never know.
But yeah, that Melbourne winning 14 of the last 15 against the Broncos, that's a huge stat in the Storm's favour. And I think that, along with the fact that Reece Walsh is still missing, and just Melbourne's dominance at home at Amy Park, I've got to go for the Storm here.
Yeah, and the return of, if it actually happens, Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes.
Yeah, those ins, huge ins for the Storm.
They had a loss against Newcastle last week, but it was mainly because of missing trips. Newcastle weren't convincing. So we're both going Storm. Obviously, the expert tips from everyone, Piercy, Snooky, Gowie, and Dan and myself will be up later on today. For anyone who's watching before the game tonight, Storm. It'll be Storm. I need to get some tips, though. I have to get some right. This is a problem. I'm kind of getting smashed right now, so I need to get some.
It's tough. It's a tough game, isn't it?
Yeah. It's killing me.
It's like a lottery, isn't it?
In my personal tipping comp, I'm coming third. But in the expert tips here, I'm just getting smashed.
It is a long season, though. Plenty of time.
I'm going to catch up. The Friday night is interesting because both of our teams are playing.
Yes.
Now, both. It's quite funny that obviously Bulldogs are at home at Accor Stadium against the Roosters. Bulldogs are currently paying $3.80 to the Roosters $1.28. You can't think that's fair. You can't not think that's fair odds. Bulldogs have had some changes in their team, though.
Yeah, the loss of Josh Adokar with that concussion, that brings Blake Wilson back into the starting side. Unfortunately, they just can't keep Adokar on the field at the moment. He's on again, off again, keeps having injury problems, unfortunately. Be good to see him get a nice long stretch of games together, but anyway, it is what it is. Jacob Preston with that broken jaw and Kurt Moran with that suspension, they're also out. So Josh Curran joins the starting pack and Harrison Edwards comes onto the bench along with Kitty Oni Kautoga. Yeah, Preston and Moran, I thought Moran really added a lot of punch to their attack last week. So to be missing him through suspension, that's a big loss for the Bulldogs with this one. As for the Roosters, test prop Lindsay Collins returns after missing the Panthers game due to a hamstring injury. That means Terrell May goes to the bench and Egan Butcher drops to the reserves. Angus Crichton, he's been named to start in the back row, with Satili Tupanua moving to the bench there for them. Yeah,
and obviously the Roosters haven't made any changes in their team from last week.
Yeah, and you did mention the other day when I was talking to you off camera that there's some sort of Bulldogs premiership reunion at this game, the 2004.
Yeah, 2004 premiership reunion. I have tickets, but I'm unable to go. Maybe you can actually take the tickets.
Yeah, I might talk to you about that.
Yeah. So it's obviously it's been 20 years since that grand final win by the Bulldogs over the Roosters.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago.
How the fortunes have changed. So the entire grand final team will be making an appearance at the event, the 2004 grand final team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked at length about the Bulldogs' woes. Obviously, the Roosters lost last week against the Panthers. Mm-hmm. Again, nobody tipped the Panthers. Even Craig Gower, the Panthers tragic, couldn't tip the Panthers. You can't see anything but the Roosters dominating the Bulldogs in this. I think Dom Young's probably going to score 18 tries up that edge.
Yeah, you talk about try scorers. If you are looking for a punt in this game, James Tedesco scored 13 tries in 10 games against the Bulldogs. As for the Bulldogs, Viliami Kikau scored 5 tries in his last 7 games against the Roosters as well. Stephen Crichton, the Bulldogs skipper, he's scored 7 tries in 9 games at Accor Stadium as well. So there's a few options for the punters for try scorers. Maybe no great surprise given that they've struggled to win games for a number of seasons now, but the Bulldogs have only won 2 of their last 8 games at Accor Stadium, which is predominantly their home ground.
Yeah, their home ground. Yeah, it's not looking good for the Bulldogs in this game. When are the Bulldogs going to get another easy game? Is the question that everybody's got to ask themselves.
Yeah,
to get that second win.
It won't be this one. So I'm tipping the Roosters.
Yeah, me too.
I think they'll get up here.
I really, really hope. Unfortunately for the Bulldogs, I really, really hope the Roosters win just because of my tips.
It's all right. I think everyone will be tipping the Roosters, so if you don't get it right, you won't be alone.
You have to be mad to tip the Bulldogs, to be honest. The other game is obviously, as I said, the Knights versus my Dragons at home with the Knights. The Elite Bet odds are giving the Knights $1.44 to the Roosters Dragons $2.85. Happy to see it's not as long as the Roosters versus the Bulldogs. I don't know. I've kind of find these odds a bit out. The Knights haven't exactly been setting the world on fire. They did beat Melbourne, but it was with a weakened team and it wasn't very convincing. Dragons, obviously, after I guess the bookies are just giving it that the Dragons will drop so much ball that Kalen Ponga will be able to run over them. Yeah,
I sort of think maybe. I mean, the Dragons did beat Manly last week, but. Just Manly were right off. I mean, that. Yeah. I tell you what, that could be the worst game that I've seen Tom Trbojevic play. I'm sorry to say that, but I'm just being honest.
No, he
was right out of form last week, and I'm sure it's just a one-off. We know the great player that he is, and he will bounce back for Manly this weekend. But I just think. I'm sorry to say, I know you decked out in your Dragons jumper today and everything, but I think that had a lot more to do with Manly being right off.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The Dragons were atrocious, and it was Manly's defence and the majority of the game. You know, that stat that I said on Tuesday, that second half, 20 minutes in the second half, Manly only had a 70% completion rate, while the Dragons at that point had only had 29% and only gotten to the kick twice at the 20th minute. How did Manly lose that game? They weren't the worst team on the park when it came to coughing the ball up. But it was just like the Manly's defence was out really poorly as well, and yeah, Dragons only won that game because Manly were even worse than how bad the Dragons were, even though the Dragons were actually the worst team on the park. It was such a bizarre game. That was the thing. It's the kind of game where if you were trying to introduce someone to rugby league, that would be the worst game ever to introduce to rugby league because they would think they were watching an under-9s team play. So I can see why the bookies have the Knights as favourites.
Yeah,
I just think those odds are a bit long for the Dragons.
What are the odds you got?
It's $1.44 for the Knights and $2.85 for the Dragons.
Yeah, I think that's a bit long. Yeah, I wouldn't have them at $2.85. I think maybe they should be more like about $2.20.
Yeah.
Ish, I would say. As for the team news, Jackson Hastings is back for the Knights for the first time since being dropped after round 2. So he's come in for Tyson Gamble. So Adam O'Brien's made the switch there in the halves. I'm not really surprised about that. I don't know why that didn't happen in the first place, to be honest. When they were looking to get Cogger in, I thought that should have been in place of Gamble in the first place rather than Hastings. But anyway, he's made that adjustment now.
When I look at that change, I just think that gives the Newcastle even more chance of winning. You know, that's a much better combination. Unfortunately for Tyson Gamble, Willie Mason's enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hastings isn't the only inclusion for the Knights. Dane Gagai He returns from that medical condition which kept him from playing in Auckland last week, and Leo Thompson is back from suspension. Jaden Brayley starts at hooker after being eased back from injury via the interchange over the last fortnight. As for your Dragons, just the one change to the 17 who beat Manly last week, with Michael Molo replacing Hame Selly on the bench. Tom Eisenhuth is again named to start at lock but could revert back to the bench, as was the case in round 4. Christian Tuipulotu is listed in the reserves and continued his push for an NRL spot with 4 tries in reserve grade last week.
You know, when you look through the teams, the Dragons team on paper overall is actually better, but it's just they're not a better team. You know, when you look through those teams, you got Tyrell Sloan, Zac Lomax, Jack Bird, Ravalawa, Ben Hunt, Francis Moller, Jacob Little, Jack DeBellin, Luciano Leilua, Tom Eisenhuth, Blake Laurie, Raymond Fatala Mariner. You know, that sounds like a really good football team. It's just, yeah, they're not quite there yet. I'm sure Flano will have them there next year, but I'm going the Knights on this one. I think they'll get it just because I think exactly what I said at the beginning. The Dragons will cough up the ball and Kalen Ponga will be able to run over them. I think Kalen Ponga will carve up the Dragons.
And he has in recent times too. Ponga's got 4 tries in his last 3 games against the Dragons. Tyrell Sloan, though, you mentioned him before, he scored 6 tries in his last 4 games. So Ponga and Sloan, they're the 2 fullbacks, definitely try-scoring options for the punters. This is an interesting one, though. The Knights have only won 2 of their last 7 games against the Dragons at McDonald Jones Stadium. So that's a surprise. That there's a bit of an oddity there with that statistic. Another try-scoring option, Jack Bird scored 6 tries in 7 games against the Knights as well. I did mention the Dragons have a really good record there at McDonald Jones Stadium, but the Knights have a really good record at home in recent times too. They've won 7 of their last 8 games there.
Yeah, I think they're doing very well at home.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go for the Knights, only because they're at home. No other reason. If the Dragons were at home, I'd be going the other way. But I think the home ground advantage gets the Knights over the line here.
I have the expectation because Kalen Ponga always carves up the Dragons. That's the thing. And with the amount of ball that the Dragons have been dropping, and especially last week, if they have a repeat of that, Tom Trbojevic was actually carving up the Dragons, but then just making really terrible mistakes. And the other Manly players were also making really terrible mistakes. So many mistakes within the opposition 20 and stuff like that. Line breaks, everything, like tackle busts all over the shop against the Dragons. And I can't see the Knights, even though I don't expect them to do well this year, I can't see them having an error-riddled game like Manly did. And with the Dragons, I can see the Dragons having another one. So I think the Knights will get it based on the back of that. Kalen Ponga's just going to carve them up.
Yeah, and I know I've said that, I think the Knights will win, and I have mentioned that the Dragons have that really good record in Newcastle recently. But I guess we've just got to keep in mind that, up until last year, and I know the Dragons have struggled as well, but the Knights were a really struggling team. So you got to be a bit wary of those statistics that, that stat that the Knights have only won, I think, 2 of their last 7 against the Dragons at McDonald Jones Stadium. Got to bear in mind that's going to go back a number of seasons, and if we go back a number of seasons, well, we're going to a period where the Knights really did struggle prior to last year. Yeah. So I think that home crowd there in Newcastle, I think they'll really help the Knights get home in this one. I'm sorry to say.
No, I accept it. On to Super Saturday. It opens with the Rabbitohs versus the Warriors. Rabbitohs were 16th versus Warriors 10. Rabbitohs coming off a bullcrap win. Bookmakers, I don't know why maybe because it is at Accor Stadium in Sydney, they have very close odds here. Rabbitohs are paying $2.13 with Elite Bet, and the Warriors are at $1.72. So the bookmakers and Elite Bet don't see much in that. I can't understand why.
Yeah, I mean, I'm overwhelmingly favouring the Warriors here. I just think Yeah, I don't think the Rabbitohs were that impressive in that win over the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs really struggled in attack. They looked completely disjointed in attack. And the Rabbitohs only got home by 4 points with all the strike weapons they've got in the side. So I think I mentioned last week that if the Rabbitohs, before that game against the Bulldogs, if the Rabbitohs win this game, I don't think it's going to solve all their problems. I certainly stand by that.
100%.
I don't think... it really feels like the Rabbitohs are going nowhere fast this season. And, the pressure is still on Jason Demetriou. If they were to drop this game and drop the game in round 6 before they have the bye, well, then those calls for his job are just going to get even louder and louder over that bye weekend. As for the team news, with Alex Johnston sidelined by a hamstring injury, Isaac Tui Tupu Thompson gets the call up to start in an otherwise unchanged backline for the Rabbitohs. Jacob Host retains his place in the back row with Michael Cheekham again included on the bench. Dean Hawkins, he'll make his third straight appearance in the number 7 jersey with Lachlan Ilias remaining in the reserves. I think Ilias is really unlucky.
I think he's really on the outer.
He's unlucky because they would have won with him at halfback last week. It had nothing to do with the fact that Hawkins was there. Hawkins was just lucky that he got to go up against a weak opponent in the Bulldogs. If Ilias had been there, they would have won as well. So I think Ilias is hard done by to continue to be left out here.
It's just because Cody Walker is one of the favourites, so he gets none of the blame.
100%.
Feel bad for Ilias. Meanwhile, over at the Warriors, Charles Nickel-Clockstad is back, and as we talked about the other day, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has been moved to the centres, back to the centres. Look, that alone makes me think the Warriors will just smash the Rabbitohs.
Just the ability to have someone of the calibre of Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, a former Dally M medal winner, as your backup fullback is. I mean, before the season, I tipped the Warriors to win the premiership, and that was one of the reasons why the depth in key positions. I just think they're right up there. Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned Nickel-Clockstad named for the first time in 2024, overcoming a hamstring injury. RTS, it'll be his 200th game.
Oh, wow.
He'll be playing in the centres. Veteran Tamari Martin comes in to replace the injured Luke Metcalf at 5'8". Chanel Harris-Tavita is listed in the wider reserves. Marata Niukore starts in the second row in place of Kurt Capewell, who's sitting out under concussion protocol. With Tom Ale and Freddie Lussick, the new additions to the bench for the Warriors. Try scorer value, if you're looking for it. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak has 24 tries in his last 20 games, going better at one try a game in his last 20 games. The Rabbitohs have scored 208 points in their past 5 games against the Warriors. They're not playing like they were previously against... No. They're not in that sort of form at the moment, though, the Rabbitohs, that's for sure. Cody Walker, we talked about him before. He's got 9 tries in 11 games against the Warriors as well. So
I still can't go. I think the Warriors will win. I don't think give the Rabbitohs any chance.
Yeah, they're just not playing well enough at the moment, the Rabbitohs. And the quality and depth of the Warriors, I think they get this one and comfortably.
100%. Yeah. Second game is the Sea Eagles looking to try and bounce back, unfortunately for them, against the Panthers. Now, Panthers won a good game, won against the odds last week. This week they are the favourites. Elite Bet has the Panthers at $1.70 with Manly Sea Eagles at $2.19. This is a Manly home game at 4 Pines Park. Strangely, Aaron Woods has been named for the Sea Eagles, but it's in the reserves. Ex-Dragon, Shark, Bulldog, Tiger. Aaron Woods in the reserves.
He's done the rounds, hasn't he? Played a lot of clubs. Just the Panthers are just so impressive, beating the Roosters without Nathan Cleary and James Fisher-Harris, the Golden Boot winner, But Fisher Harris is back from injury and he'll start in the front row alongside fellow Kiwi Moses Leota. Maverick Guy, son of the great MG, he unfortunately has to make way. Someone's got to come out, unfortunately, when you're getting a player like Fisher Harris back. Brad Schneider will go again in the number 7 jersey after a strong club debut last week in the absence of Nathan Cleary. As for the Sea Eagles, they've off Anthony Seibold is stuck loyal to a team that really didn't turn up to play against the Dragons. I guess they have to, really. They've got no choice. They don't have much depth, so they've just got to back their superstars.
What are they going to change?
They're not really going to change anything. It's 2 straight losses for them now, though, the Sea Eagles. So the Panthers are not the side you want to be coming up against after 2 straight losses. Daly Cherry Evans, he will become the club's all-time appearance record holder, surpassing Cliff Lyons with his 310th game for Manly. Prop Matt Lodge has returned to team training and is expected to be available to play again in coming weeks, following an ACL injury last season.
Well, Daly Cherry Evans should have been a Titan. But anyway...
we're going to be talking a bit about that later too.
Even though the Panthers are missing Nathan Cleary and the Manly was one of the form teams of the comp 2 weeks ago, I don't think Manly can bounce back against the Panthers. It's the worst possible time for them to be playing the Panthers.
Well, it just shows that the dominance of the Panthers, that they could be missing players of the calibre of Nathan Cleary and James Fisher-Harris and still be a fellow contender in the Roosters. Of course, before this reign of dominance by the Panthers, not that long ago, there was the Roosters winning back-to-back premierships in 2018 and 19. So it just shows you how dominant the Panthers are, that they could beat a formidable opponent missing those 2 key players. And they get one of them back this week in Fisher Harris. So that really, given how Manly played last week against the Dragons, given how well the Panthers played under strength last week against the Roosters, it really puts it in the Panthers' favour for me. I'm going to tip them. Manly's won 4 of their last 6 at home there at 4 Pines Park. But the Panthers have won their last 8 games against Manly. Manly centre to Tolu Tau Kula has scored 3 tries in his last 2 games at 4 Pines Park. And Panthers winger Sunia Taruva is in a real golden run of form at the moment. 11 tries in his last 8 games.
Yeah, it's Panthers for me. Final game on Saturday will be... This just sounds weird to say. The first place Dolphins up against the 6th place Tigers.
Yeah, it is a weird one to say. I don't think it'll be lasting for too long somehow. Either.
Dolphins are the favourites. This is a Suncorp. Dolphins are $1.51 with Elite Bet, our NRL bookmaker for the year, against the West Tigers, $2.65.
Sorry.
Those odds are fair. I don't know. The West Tigers are such a... I don't know.
Yeah, well, 2 straight wins under Benji Marshall. He goes up against his coaching mentor in Wayne Bennett. That's an interesting side note to this game. Absolutely. A bit of movement on the team front for the Dolphins. The 2-game suspension to Max Plath sees Ray Stone move into the starting side, with Kenny Bromwich joining the bench. Sean O'Sullivan and Jared Wallace, they're listed among the reserves for the table-topping outfit that they are right now. Again, I don't think it's going to last too long somehow.
I can't see
but anyway, they may as well enjoy it while it lasts. As for the Tigers, Jaden Sullivan returns to the starting side at 5'8", of course, with that Lachlan Galvin suspension, banned for 2 games for that hip drop tackle. Latu Fainu joins the bench for his NRL debut, while Alex Twal's return from concussions sees Asu Kepa-Oa drop to the reserves.
With the loss of Galvin... New South Wales best 5'8". I don't even know if he's a New South Welshman, but it's how rugby league is after one good game. He should play for Australia.
We are going to be talking about that a bit later in the news.
He should play for Australia. Galvin got a lot of raps for last week, but it's one of those things to me where Aiden Caesar was actually more pivotal to the success. Leaving Galvin to play his game, and I kind of hate that term, play their game kind of thing, but Aiden Caesar organising the thing and Jaden Sullivan coming in to replace Galvin doesn't make that big of a difference. I would expect Sullivan to kind of have the same outcome as Galvin did last week. But I just can't see them coming over the top of the Dolphins, who are in phenomenal form and who are going to maintain the top spot of the ladder for another week.
Yeah, it's just really disappointing for the Tigers that Galvin is missing from this game. That those 2 try assists, including that key try towards the end of the game, scored by Buller that he set up.
Yeah.
Just missing that spark that he brings. I think it's really going to hurt the Tigers in this one. In their favour, though, the Dolphins have only won 1 of their last 4 games at Suncorp Stadium, so it's not really.
Okay. Dolphins were last year, right? They debuted last year. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's the West Tigers will be aiming for 3 consecutive wins for the first time since 2018. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. Yeah. Jermaine Asako, he's a try-scoring flutter option. Scored 5 tries in his last 4 games at Suncorp Stadium. Interestingly, though, the Tigers have only won 2 of their last 11 games in Queensland. Tom Flegler, the Dolphins front rower, he's going to play his 100th NRL game too.
So I'm going Dolphins. You going Dolphins?
Yes, I am. You can lock me in for that.
That's sweet. This week we've got no variation so far, and I can't see the next 2 games having any variation. Kicking off over onto Sunday, where we get to sleep in, we've got the Cowboys versus the Titans. Now, these odds are Cowboy with Elite Bet. Cowboys are paying $1.15 to the Gold Coast, $5.70. I can only see for the rest of the year, if the Titans continue as they are, those odds getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If it was the Panthers versus the Titans today, I would hazard a guess the Panthers would be paying $1.01, with the Titans paying $12 or something like that. Yeah. Like, the Titans are an abysmal.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they are the wooden spoon favourites right at the moment.
100%. They're an abysmal outfit with nothing exciting to look forward to.
Des Hasler's going to need a long time to right the ship there. It's going to take a number of years, I think, for him to.
Yeah, well, he's got to recruit a team.
And he's got to let go of players first and then hope that the right players are available and then recruit them. This is going to take a number of years. That they need to just brace themselves, fasten the seatbelts. I think they're in for some pain, that's for sure, over the coming seasons.
Well, they can join us. All their fans, they can join us.
As for the Titans, they got new faces on both wings. It's no surprise that they're changing things up after their dreadful start. Jojo Fafita, an off-season recruit, Harley Smith-Shields, coming in to replace Philip Sammy. He is out with an ankle injury, though. Alofiana Khan Pereira hasn't been named, though. He's been omitted. David Fafita set to come off the bench again. Managed 55 minutes in his return from injury last week. Isaac Liu's out under the concussion protocol. Jamin Jolliffe moves to prop and Aaron Clark starts at lock, with Josiah Pahulu called in to debut from the interchange in the absence of Keena Palasi, who's got a quad injury. As for the Cowboys, they've stuck solid and unchanged 17 from that team that got done by the Broncos last week.
Yeah, I can't see a reason for them to change just because they got done by the Broncos.
They did have a good start to the season, so hopefully it's just a little glitch for them what happened last week. Jake Granville's going to play his 200th game for the club off the bench, the utility. Kyle Felt is closing in on becoming North Queensland's all-time top try scorer, interestingly, on the wing there. Tom Chester is again listed as 18th man for the Cowboys. So
yeah, there's no reason why you could ever think that anything other than the Cowboys are going to smash that one, and it's going to be like an 85-0 game. Titans have scored 4 tries all year. I can't even see them scoring a point against the Cowboys, who are, despite last week, rampaging. You know, they were the last team in the comp basically to lose a game.
Yeah, the stats all go in favour of the Cowboys, which won't surprise you at all. They've won 3 of their last 4 against the Titans. The Titans have only won 1 of their last 12 games in Townsville, and the Cowboys have won 7 of their last 9 games at home there at Queensland Country Bank Stadium.
You got to feel for the Titans. They're a 5-year plan away from any success. Yeah,
100%. I'll back Des Hasler every day of the week. His coaching credentials are sensational, but you sort of wonder if he had a quiet moment there to himself, if he'd be going,
"What have I done?"
With the money that he would have in the bank at this point in his life, would he be going, was it really worth me taking this job on?
Could honestly ruin his legacy.
I mean, I don't think it won't ruin it, but it may sour it.
Yeah, well, it's like Wayne Bennett's legacy was soured because of Newcastle. There was nothing Wayne Bennett could have done at Newcastle given their off-field horror show that went on while he was there. But, there's always that Wayne Bennett at Newcastle, and Des Hasler, no matter what, for the rest of his life, is going to have Des Hasler's time unless he turns it around.
Yeah.
If he turns it around...
Any coach would be struggling with that roster. So when, Brazen Astor had a go at Hasler after 2 games, I thought that was a bit much. Any coach would be really under the pump with that roster.
So... It's Cowboys all the way for me.
You can lock me in for the Cowboys there.
Sweet. And to round out this round, to finish up the round on Sunday will be a game that I have no interest in, Raiders versus the Eels. Now, Mitch Moses is still out, so obviously the Raiders are favourites in Canberra at $1.80 to the Eels $2.04 with Elite Bet. It's pretty close odds, pretty tight, and that would all be based around... the missing Mitch Moses.
Yeah, just one change for the Raiders after that loss to the Sharks. Arta Mariota comes into the starting side for Zach Hosking, who's out with concussion. Simi Sasagi comes onto the bench for his first game in Raiders colours. As for the Eels, you just touched on them. Bailey Simonson's been recalled in the centres, with Morgan Harper making way, while Bryce Cartwright remains sidelined by a rib injury. Warimu Greg is back in the 17 for his first NRL game of 2024 after 3 games in New South Wales Cup. Brendan Hands has been relegated to the reserves list. Yeah, they are, obviously they are without Mitchell Moses for an extended period of time here, and we saw that they were deeply affected by that last week going down to the Tigers there on Easter Monday. So I am going to be tipping the Raiders in this one. They've won 3 of their last 4 games at GIO Stadium. They're at home. Raiders centre Sebastian Chris has scored 4 tries in 5 games against the Eels, if you're looking for try scorer value. The Eels have only won 2 of their last 12 games in Canberra as well. They're at GIO Stadium. So the home ground is a big factor in this game. And as we get into the winter months, that home ground advantage is big for Canberra with how cold it gets there. It's a real difficult ask for these away sides to go and play in Canberra as we get into the colder months in winter.
I as much as it pains me to say it, I have to tip the Raiders simply because of that missing Mitch Moses. It's a tight one. Even the odds give you a tight one, but yeah. They're missing their first choice halfback, who's an origin halfback. The main, like Dylan Brown went well at halfback last week, but yeah, you just can't go past that. Unfortunately for the Eels, I won't be surprised if the Eels win though, because it is the Raiders. And if there's one thing that Ricky Stewart's Raiders can do, is break a winning streak for the other team.
I mean, the Eels have won 5 of their last 7 against the Raiders as well, and. If you are looking at another try scorer, Raiders hooker Danny Levi has scored 3 tries in his last 4 games too.
And then Sharks have the bye. They should be able to win that. You'd hope. They're paying $1.01.
I think I mentioned I am tipping the Raiders. I did. Yeah.
On to Rugby League news, and we start off with my man Zac Lomax. Obviously, he wants out because he doesn't want to play in the wing. He wants to go back to right centre, and the Dragons have given him a release, granted him a release from next year on the condition they have to pay $0 of his salary. He's been released no matter what, but they won't be paying any of his salary next year. So he's on $800,000 a year. So some teams got to pick him up. Eels are the favourites. I have a suspicion that, in theory, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see Zac Lomax go. But over at the Eels, they've got Will Penasini in that centre position. So if Zac Lomax is going to the Eels, surely he's playing wing.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I noticed Billy Slater sort of called the Dragons out a little bit, saying that there's double standards, how that they wouldn't let Ben Hunt go when Ben Hunt wanted a release, but they're letting Zac Lomax go. I don't really agree with Slater, because the contract is there to protect both parties. So if you get to a point where both parties are happy for separation to occur, well, then what's the problem with it? The Dragons have obviously waited up and decided that, for whatever reason, it's in their best interest to let Lomax go. And Lomax, for whatever reason, has decided that it's in his best interest to get a release at the end of the season. It's in both parties' best interests, as opposed to the Ben Hunt saga where he wanted to go, but it wasn't in the Dragons' interest to let him go.
It's pretty easy to tell why. You don't want to pay $800,000 for a winger, and there are no other halfbacks available.
That's right.
So what are you going to do? You free up your $800,000 to go and spend $200,000 on a winger, and on the other side, it's let go of a halfback and have no halfback.
Yeah.
There was nothing, no one they could, no one available.
It's a different set of circumstances.
Yeah.
It's in their best interests, in their view, to part ways with Lomax at the end of the season, free up that $800,000, like you said, and put it to better use within their salary cap.
I would also say, there's been much discussion around Ben Hunt, where Ben Hunt wanted to leave after Anthony Griffin was let go, and then Shane Flanagan came in and met with him and discussed it with him and convinced him to stay, and now he's happy to stay. As opposed to Shane Flanagan has discussed with Zac Lomax how he's a winger now and that's it, and Zac Lomax hasn't been convinced, even though he's still playing very well. And there's even things like people are calling for him to be given a wing spot in Origin. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. Nobody at the Dragons could convince him. And so, as I just said, it's either the Dragons could force him to stay unhappily, which would obviously affect his form, or let him go for the best of both parties. With the Ben Hunt situation, they were able to convince him that his decision to leave was wrong or not in his best interest, and he decided, you know what, all right, I'll stay. It's just the main thing with the Ben Hunt one is it dragged out all of last year, because Shane Flanagan was not able to get to the thing like, what are my plans going to be? He had to make his plans first to show Ben Hunt, these are my plans, this is where we're going, just hang around for another year and we'll see how you go. Whereas Zac Lomax has seen all the plans, he's played in it, and he said, yeah, I don't like where this is going, I want out. So Shane Flanagan's like, all right, man, if you don't like where it's going, you can go, it's fine.
Yeah, clubs can't just roll over whenever a player asks for a release. The contract's there to protect them as well as the player. In this instance, the club has determined that it is in their best interest to let go of the player, and obviously it's in the player's view, Zac Lomax, he sees that it's in his best interest to go as well. But you can't just allow the players to run roughshod over the club. The contract is there, it goes both ways. The player's contracted to the club, and the club's contracted to the player as well. It's it's not the same thing, and I think Billy Slater's wide of the mark on this one.
I agree. There's some other players off contract that are worth $800,000.
So there's been talk that, and I know it's a different position, obviously, but with Nelson Asofa Solomona falling out of favour at Melbourne, he can't get a start there at the moment. There's talk that Craig Bellamy's not happy with his fitness levels. Maybe he had a lacklustre pre-season. Is that something you think the Dragons should pursue? But there was also some talk. Well, if the Storm are willing to let him go, well, you got to be a bit careful of that as well. There's a reason that they'd want to be letting a Sofa Solomona go.
He went and boxed, in the off season.
And I'm sort of surprised that Bellamy let him do that.
It's if his heart and mind is in boxing, because being overweight. Because the thing with him was that he's overweight. He was given a weight goal or something. This is what I've heard. He was given a weight goal to come back to training at, and he came back in overweight. And since then, hasn't shown any interest in getting back down. Okay, now that doesn't necessarily mean that he's unfit, but boxing has a much different muscle mass kind of things. You need different muscles, and so he could be concentrating more on boxing and not wanting to get fit for rugby league because it's very different. Like, rugby league, obviously, there's a lot of leg drive and stuff like that, whereas boxing, it's a lot of hip movement and stuff. So it's very different exercises you do. And, I wouldn't want the Dragons to pick him up if he's no longer interested in playing rugby league. Because I don't know how much he got paid for that fight with, who was it? Jared Wallace. Yeah, Jared Wallace. But even if it was like, $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000, he may see that as a thing like, I could do this 3 times a year and make more money than playing rugby league. And if I do it 3 times a year, win 3 times, I'll start commanding like $500,000, the $600,000, the $700,000. Do it for a couple of years and I'll be commanding $1 million, and that's per fight. And if I could do that 3 times a year, that's it's a wrong way to think about it, but that's the way people see it. They see those dollar signs. And, you've got the TPJ situation in the same boat, right? He's gone off to do boxing, and now he wants to come back to rugby league because my theory for that is he saw those dollar signs. He saw the potential. I could be making $1-2 million for, 6 to 8 weeks work with one night fight 3 times a year. But it hasn't eventuated, and now he's realised, oh, crap. I'm not going to be able to make that $750,000 that I was making at the Bulldogs. I need to go back to rugby league now. So I don't think the Dragons, circling back, should take Nelson Asafa-Solomona if that is his attitude. Mm-hmm. If he's looking more to boxing, they definitely shouldn't take him. He's a better... Right now, because Zac Lomax is just a winger, I use the term just a winger very loosely, he's a very good winger, and he's one of the best players on the Dragons field, they can, in theory, replace him very easily for the wing. But getting a power forward like Asafa-Solomona would be a good get.
Yeah, no, a lot of it is salary cap management. So Shane Flanagan's obviously sat there and weighed it up and gone, well, Zac Lomax is not happy here. He's a winger taking up $800,000 a year in our salary cap. Shane Flanagan perhaps thinks that $800,000 could be better spent could be better utilised better in his salary cap than having all that money poured into a winger. So Nelson Asafa-Solomona is one name that's been thrown up. Another name that's been thrown up that is in that position of winger is Sunia Taruva, the Panthers winger, the Dally M Rookie of the Year. Now, according to reports, the Panthers have offered him $350,000 a season. So this could be where Flanagan's looking. He might be going, well, we could let Lomax go, free up the 800, and then, well, if the Panthers are offering him $350, the Dragons might only need to offer him about $500 to get him to the Dragons. And, would I let Lomax on 800 go to get Taruva for 500 at the moment? Yeah, I would 100%. 100%. And then you got $300,000 to spend elsewhere in your salary cap.
Someone else,
someone else, or even buy another player altogether. $300,000 is nothing to be sneezed at. You can get a very seasoned first grader for $300,000.
Yeah, like the Dragons do need. They're building out their forward pack, but they still need maybe like 1 or 2 more strike high-level forwards. Their backline is okay, pretty good. The only issue really with their backline right now is that the winger is getting paid centre money. So they get rid of that winger that's getting paid centre money and bring in a winger that's a proper winger that's getting paid winger money. It's also an option. all I really care about is Zac Lomax plays well for the rest of the year. I hope he continues to play as he has been, because he's been one of the Dragons' best players, and his name is in that Origin ring at the moment. Because has been for the past few years actually to play wing for Origin, even at centre, though he's a centre, and he's done so well on the wing. He's making good meters. He's hitting up the ball well. He's scoring tries.
I'll tell you what, you want an example of, I guess, pouring too much money into superstar outside backs and not still misfiring in attack because you don't have a halfback. You just look at the Bulldogs at the moment. Look at all the money they got poured into Stephen Crichton and Josh Adokar. Two very good attacking weapons, but look at the Bulldogs' attack. Because they don't have a halfback, it's nowhere to be seen.
Exactly.
So there's your example of, the centres and the wingers, there's only so much they can do in a game if you don't have, quality in the key spine positions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Buy Zac Lomax, but I honestly think he'll be gone in the next couple of weeks. I think he will. I think he'll sign an agreement with the Eels and be gone in the next couple of weeks. He'll go out there and he'll probably have to play wing. But they'll work it out next year, what he does after that. They could let go of Penasini. I doubt they'd let go of Penasini, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how that one plays out.
So now it's time for Honestly, Guys, It's Just Our Opinion. There has been rumblings in the NRL that the NRL should ban kickoffs to avoid the high-speed collisions and prevent concussions from happening. This comes because of some changes that were announced by the NFL, who are the leaders of the concussion prevention kind of thing. They were the first sporting organisation in the world to get sued by the past and present players for CTE issues. So the NRL is has been discussing how they can move forward. And so, banning the kickoff to avoid that very first hit up of the game or after any try or points are scored. Short answer, no.
I think it's just it's going too far into changing the fabric of the game. This is the difference between now and say 20, 30 years ago is 20 or 30 years ago we didn't have the medical information and research access to that information that we have now. Now players are very aware of that there is a chance if they suffer repeated concussions throughout their career that unfortunately they may run into health problems later on in life. That's very clear to us all now, I would have thought. There have been a number of examples, very sadly and unfortunately. So these players are fully aware of that, and with that in mind, they choose to be NRL footballers and get paid really well for it. Nobody forces them into this career. They choose to play professional rugby league, and so they choose to put themselves at that risk. As for if they're not happy with it, by all means, hand in your resignation and go and work in another job. There's nobody stopping you from doing that. I got
no concussion risk from my office job.
100%. They can come and work here if they want. I'm sure you'll have them.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Zac Lomax.
Yeah. So as for the kickoffs themselves, I mean, they don't have to. This is the other thing. You see players do that, and obviously they're trying to send a message to the opposition with a really strong first carry. We never forget that 2014 grand final with Sam Burgess taking that first carry, running straight into James Graham, breaking that cheekbone, and then playing on very courageously with that cheekbone injury and going on to win the Clive Churchill medal in that game. It's sort of like that first run, it's seen as like it's a way of the team that they want to make a statement, send a message to the other team, but you never see teams make a line break off the kickoff unless they pass the ball. So they don't have to run like that. They could run a lot more slowly into the defensive line if they wanted to and have a lot less impact in that first hit up.
Yeah, I can remember a James Graham offload off a kickoff in which the Bulldogs... actually, it was when he was at the Dragons. It was one of these first games at the Dragons. he hit the ball up and got an offload on the first ball of the game, first run of the game, and it created a line break. You never see it because that's a coach killer. The coaches are just, no, first run of the game, hold the ball, James. But, I think Craig Gower said it when he was here. What do you want to see? You want to see the best forwards running off the back fence on the kickoff. It's part of the game. It is, as much as... Look, you don't see very many injuries from it. And how many kickoffs do they have a game? We could just say, so there's 5 to 6 kickoffs a game, all right? You don't see very many injuries from it. You don't see very many head clashes from it. The times you do see it are remembered forever. Sam Burgess, now in today's game, would have had to come off the field getting hit like that. He would have. Like Reece Walsh did for a concussion check. They have the systems in place for this. And, we've talked about it before. It's not enough. I don't think it's enough for the 11 days. I was talking to someone the other day and who was a kickboxing competitor, and 30 years ago when they were doing kickboxing competitively, if they got concussed, they had to take a month off as part of the amateur scene. So, amateur kickboxers 30 years ago had to take a month off for concussion. Meanwhile, rugby league is, no matter how bad it is, 11 days. They should be doing more, changing the kickoff, which is an integral part of rugby league. It's part of the fabric of the game. It's one of the most exciting things. The things everyone gets. Who's going to take the first hit up? Is it going to be Willie Mason at the Roosters running into Sonny Bill Williams? Is it going to be Sam Burgess running into James Graham? There's these things that.
That's the thing. I know it's not a politically correct thing to say, but they've taken the punch out of the game now. And whether you like it or not, there are people I've spoken to who they'd watch the game looking for the odd biff, and now that's gone out of the game. So, and look, I understand that, we're in a different world now and everything, but there's only so many things you can take out of the game before you start really ruining the fabric of the game. And all right, you've removed the punch, okay. But once you look at removing the kick-off as well, gee, we're really heading down a dangerous path with that one, I would have thought.
Are they going to ban hit-ups next? Because that's all the kick return off the kickoff is a hit-up. So you're going to ban hit-ups next? Are you going to ban kick chases? Is it going to become like AFL where the player who gets the ball can look up and go, and take a knee, and so they don't get tackled? AFL, NFL. Because that's how it works in NFL. The punt returner can take a knee, put their hand up and say, don't tackle me.
That's the thing. If you cave in on this, well, what comes next?
Yeah.
There's always something that will come next. So you can't just keep caving into these calls for this to change or that to change about the game, because once they get their wish, they'll go after something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll keep coming and keep coming.
They have to stand strong. It'll make it so stupid. It will become like that Simpsons episode where they're all playing Tip, and it's like, Tip, you are it, and then I think Lisa walks to the next person and touches them because they don't run away and says, "Now you are the one who is it." It'll be so boring, and it's exactly the thing. You ban the initial hit up off the game, we better ban other hit ups. We better ban fullbacks and wingers returning the ball from kicks. We better. We may as well just make it so you're not allowed to touch them. We're just walking up and down the field planning tries. Yeah.
Again, I'll just clear up. I'm not. I know I mentioned the punching before. Look, I know that the world's changed and everything. Please don't hate on me, social media. I get why that rule's been changed. But all I will say is, yes, there are people out there who like to see that in a game. They did. And I'm just using that as an example because that was the first thing to go. The punch was the first thing to go. And so all these years after the punch has been banned, now they're looking for their next thing. Now it's the kickoff. Every time you cave in, they'll come for something else.
Yeah, it gets shorter.
At some point, you have to draw the line.
The next thing comes shorter as well. Once they got the one, and then they wait 10 years and get the second, then they only have to wait 5 years for the next one.
At some point, you have to draw the line and go, no, you're coming too much at the fabric of the game here. Stop coming at the fabric of the game.
Fighting, punching isn't in the rules of the game.
Yes, it's not. As
it's
much
not
as
part of the
some
game.
of us didn't mind seeing the...
Everyone loved Eric Groth bashing Justin Hodges. Okay.
And that, was it Glenn Stewart on Adam Blair at the Battle of Brookvale?
And off the field.
And Paul Gallen on Nate Miles.
Yep,
State of
leading
Origin.
with his head. Well, here's one for your head.
And the Paul Gallen on Nate Miles, that was the trigger. That basically changed the rule. Paul Gallen punching Nate Miles in that state.
And the shoulder charge was banned. Everybody loved the shoulder charge, but there was the Greg Inglis on Dean Young that was the catalyst for that one, because that was horrific. He hit Dean Young late when Dean Young wasn't looking. He had already passed the ball and he was turned away and collected him straight across the side of the chin, which is the worst place to get hit.
So that's the thing, isn't it? You make a good point. So you've just outlined what triggered the shoulder charge rule to be changed, and obviously you remember we were talking about the 2004 grand final, and that was back in the era where Sonny Bill Williams had put a good shoulder charge on someone every week. I remember he did it to Joel Clinton.
Yeah, they used it for years.
In the prelim final in that season in 2004, he did it to Joel Clinton. So we talk about the precursor to the shoulder charge being banned. We talk about the precursor to the punch being banned. Paul Gallen on Nate Miles in Origin. You just wonder what's going to be the precursor to the kick-off.
Yeah, it doesn't...
banned.
So punching multiple times was bad. It looked bad, right? So you had... it was David Farlongo on Braithen Astor.
Yes, and
that was horrible.
Yes, that was a terrible one.
That was horrible.
That was atrocious.
Paul Gallen on Nate Miles was actually people want to say it was like a dog shot. It wasn't a dog shot. Nate Miles was walking forward into it, but Paul Gallen just had got sick of Nate Miles leading with the head.
And when we say before we didn't mind the old biff, we didn't mind it when it was a fair fight. Yeah. There was two guys looking straight at each other. We didn't like the king hits like the Farlongo one.
Yeah, that one was horrible. And then, but there's never really been, except for that Sam Burgess, James Graham off the kickoff, terrible injury from a kickoff. There is just no reason. Banning one collision, what did I say before? We'll say there's 5 or 6 kickoffs a game. We'll just say that. I don't know how many it averages. Banning 5 or 6 collisions in a game when you have how many sets a game? Like it's 30, 35, 40 sets a game. In each one there's 6 tackles. One collision it breaks the game. You have to ban them all. Yeah,
you probably get like one set a minute, I'd say. So you probably get about maybe give or take about maybe 80 a game.
Yeah, so it's like 40 each.
Side, each side.
Sorry, I should have clarified. And then 6. That's 6 tackles. 6 generally collisions per. So, you see some hookers that are making like 60 tackles. One person. That one person is colliding with someone 60 times. I think Robbie Farah did like 68 tackles in one of the Oranges or 78 tackles or something. One person colliding with someone. But you're going to ban that one kickoff that happens 5 or 6 times a game. It's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And then, as you say, then what's next? Because the next thing is going to be preventing Robbie Farah from making tackles. They're going to have to do things like, when you're running, if there's a person in front of you, you have to stop and let them tackle so there's no high-speed collision. What's next?
Yeah, again, I guess if we're summarising our discussion here, I don't think the NRL should ban kickoffs, of course. I think that's a step too far, absolutely. But yeah, I'll just make clear again, I understand why they banned the punch. We are in a new world now, I get that. Just making that very crystal clear in case what I say gets misconstrued.
It's very funny. In MMA, everyone wants to see them standing up and punching. But in rugby league,
that's the thing. I say that. I get it. We're in a new world. I get why they banned the punch. All I'll say is there were people who did enjoy that part of the game. They did. It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
But we have moved with the times on that. As you rightly pointed out just before, the punching is not a part of the game.
Yeah.
Running back on the kickoff is part of the game.
Yeah, one sport where punching is part of the game is the NHL. It's actually in the rules of ice hockey. Ice hockey has some super weird rules. It's something people should really get into just as like it's like meme worthy. They have super weird rules. So fighting is actually part of the game rules. It's in the rules. Fights are allowed to go on as long as it's 1v1. Like, it's actually in the rules. Okay, so yeah, but in rugby league, the rules are you're not allowed to punch. You were never allowed to punch. When the David Farlongo one was ridiculous. When the penalty went against Braithen Astor. That was the worst thing ever, as Craig Fitzgibbon said at the time. So what you're saying is, we can go up the other end, and they can do a high tackle, and my boys can get up and hit them, and then we'll get a penalty. But, it was always illegal to punch, and all they did was made it so now you get sin binned and suspended. They just increased the punishment because it was always illegal to punch. So yeah, that's honestly, guys, it's just our opinion. Nobody in the world thinks they should ban kickoffs to avoid high-speed collisions, except for people who don't watch rugby league. I had the same conversation yesterday morning about this. I was at Bulldogs, and I had every single person was talking about it, and not a single person agreed with it. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to Reddit, RNRL, and see the sentiment. Continuing with the news, Laurie Daly has chimed in on the Latrell Mitchell. Now, I've heard since the other day, since Tuesday we talked about it, I've heard on the radio, read multiple news articles about this booing thing with Latrell Mitchell and how prominent it is and how it keeps happening. So I went and rewatched and skipped through the Rabbitohs versus Bulldogs game, and I can only hear booing like twice the whole game.
I was at the game, John, and I'll say it again. I said it on Tuesday. I did arrive 10 minutes late, got held up in Easter show traffic, unfortunately. And I did go 5 minutes before the end when it became fairly clear that the Rabbitohs were going to win the game. But in all the time I was there, the only time I really heard it was when he made that contact on Addo-Carr right on halftime, and that put Addo-Carr out of the game with a head injury assessment. He didn't return. If you make, and again, if you make contact with a star player on an opposition team and that star player goes out of the game, well, the fans of that team are going to boo that player. That's just a fact of football. It's going to happen. Also,
Loza has said that people are waiting for Latrell Mitchell to fail and fall.
Look, the first thing I'll say is I have been... I'll be totally honest about this. And look, we're on a sports news podcast here, so people watching this might go, oh, well, you don't have to talk about it. Look, we're on a sports news podcast. If it's newsworthy, we are going to talk about it. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry about that. If there are newsworthy items, we're going to talk about it. Now, I have been waiting for one single podcast where we can not address Latrell Mitchell and have a day off from him. I have been, but for a while now, I just have not been given that opportunity, and I've continued to have to put him on our rundown, and we have to talk about it. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
As for Laurie Daly, look, he says this, and I quote, he's talking about Latrell Mitchell. He says, I understand he polarises people, and not everyone is always happy with what Latrell has to say. Now, to be honest, I think that's a fairly watered-down account of what has happened so far, I have to say. There's one thing to not be happy with what someone has to say. You might disagree with them, all right, that's fair enough. It's a free country. But what Latrell's done so far, I don't think it quite falls in that category. I mean, dropping F-bombs on the game after the game in a radio interview that goes out to a lot of people. I think there's a bit of a difference between that and maybe not being happy with what someone's saying. I think there's a difference between commenting on the outcome of a judiciary hearing when you're not allowed to and not being happy with what someone has to say. So I think Laurie Daly wasn't really specific enough in what he was saying and could have gone a fair bit deeper on that one, I would have thought. That's the first point to make that I've got about it. The other point to make is there's a quote here from leading NRL journalist Dean Ritchie, and he says, when the hostility towards one player who happens to be Indigenous becomes sustained and deep-seated, we have a problem. Why aren't white players jeered as relentlessly as Mitchell has been? I cannot recall the last white player who was singled out for the same treatment.
Matt Lodge.
Yes, Matt Lodge is one.
Matt Lodge.
But I was just going to say, I mean, I was at the game and you went back and had a look at it, and we didn't. It wasn't the sustained booing that is being talked about. It
wasn't Matt Lodge.
And you said you pointed it out yourself. Matt Lodge, on his return to the NRL, the Dragons crowd booed him constantly on his return when he was playing for
the Broncos. Yeah, I went to 2 games that year with Matt Lodge, and I joined in on the booing.
Were you at that game against the Broncos?
No, that was no. It was it was that one in a Roosters game I went to.
Okay, so a quote from the great Channel 9 commentator Ray Warren from that time was, every time, in reference to Matt Lodge, every time he handles a ball, there's a growl from the crowd. That was what Ray Warren said about the booing of Matt Lodge at that time.
He was getting booed every single game, every single time he touched the ball.
Yes.
For the period of time he touched the ball. He hit up until the point he played the ball. He hit up until the time he played the ball. Crowd constantly booing.
Let me say that I don't think anything that Latrell Mitchell has done is in any way comparable to what Matt Lodge did. I should point that out. That having been said, though, that's a clear example. Dean Ritchie says, I can't remember it happening. Well, there you go, Dean. There's an example.
Mate, I remember it off the top of my head.
You remember it off the top of your head. I'll give you another example. Daly Cherry Evans, State of Origin.
Yeah.
It's State of Origin in 2021. All the games got moved to Queensland that year because of COVID. A game that was supposed to be played in Newcastle was moved to the Gold Coast. New South Wales won the first 2 games of that series that year. The third game was on the Gold Coast. Queensland won the third game that year. Even though they won that game, Cherry Evans got relentlessly booed at the end of the game when he went to give his speech. That was after Queensland won. And the reason he got booed was because he backflipped on the Titans, and those Gold Coast fans have had it in for him ever since on that. And it wasn't just that game. Cherry Evans got booed all the time when he was playing NRL games in Queensland against those Queensland sides. Yeah. Because in Queensland, if you do wrongly by one of the teams up there, you do wrongly by all of them. Yeah, the mob hate you up there.
The year he flipped, every time he played in Queensland, every Queensland team fans would boo him every time he touched the ball. And, man, he touched the ball a lot. I forgot about that one. I can remember Matt Lodge off the top of my head because I was involved in that. And that was the only time I felt like justified, that I felt a justification that everyone should boo the player. But yeah, Daly Cherry Evans was another one, constantly booed. You know what I can't remember in rugby league? The last time an Indigenous player was booed relentlessly for being Indigenous. I don't know any, actually. I've never done it. I boo Latrell Mitchell because he's a bit of a knob. He drops his hip in Dado Car. I would have booed then too. You know, it's not... It's ridiculous. A lot of people are waiting for him to fail and fall, as per Laurie Daly's quote. But it's not because he's Indigenous. It's because he's a bit of a knob. And nobody is booing him continuously. These news articles and these discussions, people are going to start booing him. I guarantee you this week. Who are the Rabbitohs playing? We just discussed it.
Was it the Warriors?
Yes. And it's at Rabbitohs. So Warriors fans are probably going to boo him. But, you know, it'll be less evident this week because it's Warriors and they're playing the Sharks next week. He's going to get hammered by the Sharks fans for sure. And it's because of the news articles and because of this thing, because it definitely didn't happen at the Bulldogs game.
Yeah, I mean, the more this gets talked about, the more it's going to become a thing, and once it becomes a thing, well, it's just going to keep happening.
Exactly.
But how do you stop fans from booing a player?
You can't.
It's part of football.
The more you ask them to, the more they're going to boo. That's the thing. The more you ask them to stop, the more they're going to boo. It's going to get more and more people on board. And the motivation for the people getting on board, it actually does become... for a lot of the group of people that get on board it, which is what happened with Adam Goodes. The clubs and the league asked people publicly, please stop booing Adam Goodes every time he touches the ball. Initially, it started because of an issue with a racist fan and stuff like that. It did, okay? The motivation wasn't that they hated Adam Goodes because he was Indigenous. The motivation initially was because there was a lot of internet and even media sentiment that Adam Goodes unfairly targeted or bullied a 14-year-old girl who racially abused him, right? And so people started booing him. But then they asked people to stop booing him. And what that did was it got the people who are bigots and stuff like that on board as like protest. You can't tell us what to do. We're going to boo that guy no matter what. So the booing got worse, and he retired because of it. You watch the documentary. It's a very good documentary. He retired because of it. And, yeah, like, the motivation for booing Latrell Mitchell at the Bulldogs the other day was because he dropped his hip into Josh Addo-Carr's head. Okay? Knocked him out of the game. He came in late.
And as Bulldogs fans, we love Josh Addo-Carr. Want Josh Addo-Carr.
It was at Bulldogs' home ground. Okay.
Yeah, and the crowd was predominantly Bulldogs. It was 75-80% Bulldogs.
It doesn't matter who the player was. Any player who had to drop their hip late into the head of Josh Addo-Carr, Bulldogs' favourite son, knocking him out of the game for the rest of the game. He wasn't coming back. He was lying on the ground unconscious. He wasn't coming back. Once you're unconscious, you can't come back. So every Bulldog fan knew, well, Latrell's just knocked Addo-Carr out of the game. We're going to boo him now. Because we hate him because he knocked Addo-Carr out of the game. Doesn't matter who the player was.
People have, life's hard for a lot of people. They work long hours. A lot of people don't get paid what they should in society. They go to the football game on the weekend. It's a release for people. It's an opportunity to let off some steam. How can you tell people that they pay their money to go to a game of football? How can you tell those people when they can and can't boo somebody? It's just not realistic to think that can take place.
What they actually have to do is ignore it. Both the clubs, the league, and the player. And
you talked about Adam Goodes before. That's what they should have done in that instance as well. Yep. Ignore it. Don't give it any oxygen.
You know what happened with Matt Lodge? The club, the league, and the player ignored it, and it went away. And it went away really quickly. Really quickly.
Because it wasn't heavily focused on. And
nobody
Jerry Evans's booing wasn't heavily focused on either. And everybody moved on.
Because if nobody cares, there's no point in doing it. That's why if people care, then people will get on board and do it more.
Yes.
Just because some people are dickheads.
So you ask people not to do something, what are they going to do? They're going to do it.
They're going to, you can't tell me what to do.
They're going to do it as an act of rebellion.
Yeah. So, everybody just needs to stop caring. Every time anything bad happens to Latrell Mitchell, but there's a bunch of media personalities and organisations that get on board the Latrell Mitchell pity train, and unfortunately it makes it worse for him. If he stopped caring, and if all of these media people stopped bringing it up, it wouldn't happen as much. But the fact they get on this Latrell Mitchell pity train, poor Latrell, people are just waiting for him to fail and fall. Man, I wait for every opposing player to fail and fall, to be honest. When you talk about Sam Burgess getting hit in breaking his cheekbone in that grand final, I was going for the Bulldogs in that game. And my thought was, yes, Burgess is out of the game now. Sorry he got hurt, but yes, he's out of the game now, We want all the opposing players to fail and fall. Not in any bad way, but just to help our teams.
You talk about the Bulldogs, right? You think about when Willie Mason went to the Roosters. That first game that he played against the Bulldogs in Roosters colours, he was booed relentlessly by Bulldogs fans. Why do you reckon he was booed? It was because he left the Bulldogs. That's why he was booed. Sonny Bill Williams did the same. He left the Bulldogs much later on.
When he came back to the Roosters.
He played for the Roosters. What do you reckon the Bulldogs fans did when Sonny Bill played against the Bulldogs for the Roosters for the first time?
I attended the Roosters Bulldogs game that year as well.
And why do you think they booed him? Because the way he left the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Okay, there are other reasons why players get booed.
Yeah,
everyone related to their race
is booing Latrell Mitchell because of the media coverage. So just stop covering him. Hopefully next week we don't have to talk about him. We'll see on Tuesday.
I'll say it one more time. I am looking forward to the day where I can come in here and Latrell Mitchell is not on our rundown.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that podcast, John.
Elite Bet, our NRL sponsor, should start putting odds on that.
Yes. I'm hoping that it's Tuesday's our next one after today. I'm hoping that it's this coming Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we can have a Latrell-free rundown.
It's not going to happen. So moving on, we have spent Latrell Mitchell always takes up about half an hour of our podcast. So you mentioned it before. Because of Lockie Galvin's single game last week, a lot of people have started to talk about the fact that West Tigers now have an embarrassment of halves, and Cooper Cronk especially said the West Tigers don't need Jerome Luai next year with the emergence of Lachlan Galvin. Dude, it's one game. He had one good game. The week before, he wasn't the best on field. We were talking about Api Coruscant the week before. Api Coruscant was ridiculous the week before. Api Coruscant was a star on the field the week before. Galvin was just there. He played well, but he was just there.
Yes.
This week, he played a phenomenal game of football.
Yes.
It was a performance that we talked about, but it's only one game.
Yes, I'm with you 100% on that one. So the quote from Cronk is, Jerome has come in as the sole ball player, and what Caesar and Galvin have put together shows it is an unnecessary requirement. Now, I'm not sure what Jerome Luai has done to Cooper Cronk. Cooper Cronk, for some reason, said that the Panthers wouldn't have won the grand final if Jerome Luai had stayed on the field. And now he's said that the Tigers don't seem to need Jerome Luai. So I don't know what Jerome Luai's done to Cooper Cronk. Maybe it's something. I don't know. It seems like it's something at this stage. Now, I agree with you 100%. I think people need to just hold their horses a little bit on the West Tigers. Okay, it's been a pleasing start. They've won 2 out of 3 games. Let's bear in mind that the Eels were missing their key playmaker, Mitchell Moses, on Monday. The Tigers got home by a point, and yes, Galvin played really well. But to jump right to these conclusions saying that they don't need a player of Jerome Luai's quality, this guy has won 3 straight premierships playing in the halves. Okay, I know he's had Nathan Cleary with him, but you don't win 3 straight premierships at 5'8" and not bring a lot to the table. This guy brings a lot to the table.
I really want to see what happens with the Tigers over the next 3 weeks, right? They've got the Dolphins this week.
It's a long season.
Top of the ladder clash, right?
It's a long season.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go and a long time for this to fall apart.
No Galvin. Then they got the Dragons.
Yes.
No Galvin again because he's suspended for 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Then their next game after that, their next run after that is the Panthers and Broncos. Do you think those 2 teams aren't going to be able to shut down?
Yes.
Lachlan Galvin?
Yes. Again, I hope that the Tigers have a much better season this season. But we need to just hold our horses. They've only played 3 games. Yes, they've won 2 of them. Good on them. Good on Benji. Well done. But let's just hold our horses here. Hang on a sec. We're saying things like they don't need a player like Jerome Luai just because they've won 2 of their first 3 games.
Do you think the Panthers and Broncos won't be able to shut down Galvin and his ability with the quality of player they have and the quality of team, as opposed to if you put Jerome Luai in that situation? We know that the Panthers and Broncos and teams of that caliber can't shut down Jerome Luai. We know it. He's won 3 premierships in the past 3 years on being able to not be shut down. You've never seen him have a game where he's quiet. But Galvin's played one exceptional game, and now the Tigers will be without him.
And this is the thing, Aiden Caesar, he's only got a 1-year deal anyway. So I think Cronk has jumped the gun here.
Absolutely.
I mean, the logical solution here is to go, look, Caesar's in the twilight of his career. It's only a 1-year deal. Logic would tell you, all right, well, you just let Caesar go at the end of the year, and you've got Galvin there to partner Luai in the halves.
Absolutely.
So I just think people have got to be a bit careful going off too early on the West Tigers here. They have won back-to-back wooden spoons going into this season. Yes, it's been a good start, but let's just see how the season plays out. We need to see a lot more of Galvin. Yes, he's had a great start. Had those 2 try assists against the Eels. Had a great game. We need to see a lot more of him before we start getting far too carried away. He's only 18 years old.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
So let's just see how this plays out over a much longer period of time.
One game, and it's Jerome Luai coming. Come on, man. Anyway, the Dally M dramas continue.
Yes.
We discussed this. Nico Hines and Kalen Ponga were awarded some points last week. It was for this week. Last week, I don't know how.
Yeah, there was
round.
Yes, there were issues around the voting. Yes.
Yes. And of course, people have commented. So
Well, yeah, I mean, Nicho Hynes played a great game on the weekend and was shunned from the voting. Cam McInnes got 6 votes, Jack Williams 2, Blake Brayley 2, Ronaldo Mulatalo 2. So the previous instance we talked about was where Hynes didn't play so well and got maximum points. This time he did play very well, but got snubbed.
It's a square up, bro.
Well, it could be. And also with Kalen Ponga, the Knights got beaten, and somehow Kalen Ponga's got more Dally M votes than Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in that game. Ponga got 4 votes, Tuivasa-Sheck got 3.
Ex-rugby union players can't get votes, I guess.
I mean, we talk about these anonymous Dally M judges. Is the problem with the anonymous judges, is the problem that the fact that they're anonymous, does that make them a bit lazy in their voting because they know they're not going to be held accountable because they're anonymous? Does that make those casting these votes, does that make them more lazy because, again, they're anonymous, so they know they're not going to be held accountable?
No one can get up and no one can complain about them specifically.
So that's another problem with this anonymous Dally M.
I reckon the Dally M should just be one guy. Dally M decider, one guy, all games for the whole year. Has to just watch every game.
Just get Andrew Johns to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like just one guy. He's got to watch every game, watches every game, then decides at the end of the year who was the best player. Don't worry about points. Don't worry about none of that stuff. Just go at the end of the year. Andrew Johns has decided that this guy was the best guy all year. Like that's it. And we can just, I might start my own, the SmartB Awards, and actually do that. And we'll just be the John medal and the Dan medal. Yeah. We decided to award you with a medal.
I just think they should just go back to the days where you get maybe a journo or someone like that doing it and just go your old 3, 2, 1. And we know who they are. Yeah, again, I don't like this buckling to social media criticism. I don't. Stronger than that.
I also said before, I don't like the 3-2-1 per game because if it's a terrible game of football, someone still has to get 3, and that can really ruin the voting. Like with Jared Hayne in 2009, he played 10 terrible games, but someone had to get 3, and he got 3 a few times. I would prefer it if it was 3-2-1 for the round. Across the thing, but yeah.
Yeah, Nicho Hynes kicked 6 from 6, had a try assist, ran for 152 metres at halfback, didn't get any points. And as we said, Kalen Ponga was in a beaten team and got more votes than Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who started Tuivasa-Sheck was
the best on the field. So the 2024 leaderboard currently sits with Nicho Hynes at the top. So they've got to get people to catch him, I guess. Dylan Edwards afterwards. Yeah. See, I believe, did Tom Travojevic get... No, he didn't get any this week, but he's still sitting at 10th.
I'll tell you what, you would hope that he didn't get any after the way he played.
He's 7th. He's in the top 10.
Against the Dragons.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. And sometimes I will every year, I think, with the Dally M's, especially when the votes are open up to round 14, around 12... They do award. It always feels to me like they do award points to make it look more competitive, Because if Nicho Hynes was on 15 points right now and Dylan Edwards was on 11 and they went behind closed doors at round 12, you'd be like,
But this is the other problem. So maybe that's an argument against, because the voting's made public and we know the leaderboard, do they factor that in?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
That's another issue. So you go, well, in that case, should it just be completely behind closed doors like the Brownlow medal is in the AFL? Nobody knows what the votes are until they get read out on Brownlow night. I
think that we've come up with the proper solution where Andrew Johns just sits down and watches every game and then goes, who was the best of the year? Zac Lomax. Because sometimes he says some players are like really good when it's like, that's a weird one, but all right, man, because you're Andrew Johns, it's fine. That's it for Rugby League for the week. We will be getting onto Rugby League on Tuesday, returning with Rugby League on Tuesday. Mitchell Pearce will be joining us to give us a State of the Union of where we are at for the year.
That's something to really look forward to.
Yeah, and so on to other sports news. And the druggy AFL players have had a claim against them in which Andrew Bogut claims he was offered drugs by AFL players. Yeah, I'd believe that.
I'd believe that too. Andrew Bogut's had a real dig at the AFL. He said he's jokingly called for the creation of a cocaine cover-up round.
Beautiful. Yes, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no surprise really. The AFL, they put on that they're this morally superior code and moral high ground code who stand for every cause there is to stand for. But yet when you dig a little deeper, you see what really goes on with their players.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all. I've said before, I think the AFL, as a code, they're just a bunch of posers.
I agree.
They only care about their image and that's it.
And they have, I've heard it from multiple people, you first, but many other people since then. They control the media, blacklist people who say anything bad about them, and that's how they do it. Like, that's how they do it. That's how they appear to be so of high standard. That's why when you have things like people say NRL players are always in trouble and AFL players aren't, it's because people don't report on the AFL players being in trouble.
And that's one thing I would point out is, there are times where we're very critical of the NRL and others are very critical of the NRL, but the NRL would never try to, to wipe a journalist out of the game or somebody who comments. They'd never stoop to that level. They'd never go that low. There's been journalists in the past who've covered the AFL very closely and really called them out on certain issues, and those journalists are nowhere to be seen now.
Exactly.
So that's a real key. A lot of the time the NRL gets criticised and the AFL gets praised by people. A lot of people say, the AFL's run a lot better, they do this and that a lot better than the NRL. But that's one area where the NRL will give you freedom of speech as someone who comments on them. They won't try to take you out of the game. The AFL are completely different.
I as I said, I believe he was probably offered drugs by AFL players. Meanwhile, over with pickleball and tennis, former tennis player Christian Olsen causes a stir with his pickleball comments. Yes. Pickleball is so wanky, man.
Yeah. It was quite funny, actually. Christian Olsen, I looked up his ATP tour profile. He has very little experience. He's not a notable ATP tennis player. So he's gone and taken up pickleball. But anyway, he said this on Twitter, and it's got quite the reaction. He says, "Pickleball has made me a much better athlete than tennis ever did. Faster reaction time and speed are needed since the ball is only coming from 10 feet away. Point for point, pickleball requires more skill than tennis." Now, the following people have had a crack at him in retaliation to what he said. Andy Roddick, former world number 1 tennis player. James Blake, very prominent former American tennis player who, he was no slouch, James Blake. He didn't win a major, but a very good tennis player in his own right. And guess who? Nick Kyrgios.
Of course he is. I don't care what he has to say.
Criticised Christian Olsen, but I just could not believe that Christian Olsen, who, again, I said was a very low-profile tennis player, got this level of reaction out of the tennis world, and I think he's got one up on them in this debate. I can't believe the likes of Roddick, James Blake reacted the way they did. I'm not going to say I can't believe Nick Kyrgios reacted. He reacts to everything, of course. But for Roddick and Blake to react like that, I think Christian Olsen's won this exchange. I think getting that sort of reaction here.
It shows that they feel kind of threatened by pickleball. It's the fastest growing sport in the world.
100%.
So wanky.
Why else would Roddick or James Blake feel the need to react in that manner?
I think they feel threatened.
He's drawn a reaction out of them, and well done to him.
Because pickleball are stealing some retired tennis players and getting them to come out of retirement. But that should also tell you how wrong Christian Olsen is, because retired tennis players who can no longer play tennis because it's too hard are able to go and play pickleball.
Yes, I will say I don't agree with Christian Olsen, but overall, looking at this whole exchange, I think he's won out of it.
Pickleball wins again.
Just because of the reaction he's got out of it. Jack Sock, the American tennis player, is one you're talking about, one who has gone down that pickleball path.
Yeah.
So,
it's just reminiscent of recently, I don't know if you heard, Conor McGregor said acting is harder than fighting. Because he was in Roadhouse, bit of fun for the whole family. Very entertaining movie, not high quality. It's not a Scorsese flick, but and Joe Rogan reacted really funnily. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Would you rather act again, or would you rather fight Khabib Nurmagomedov again? And that's the thing. Like, would you rather go and play tennis again, retired tennis player, or go and play pickleball?
Yeah,
I'll go play pickleball.
Yeah, I know how sick of talking about Nick Kyrgios, you are, so I did make a point of looking for others who would comment.
Of course he
on
commented,
the matter.
but you know what's hard for Nick Kyrgios? To play tennis. To shut his mouth.
Yes.
Continuing with tennis, Andy Roddick has mocked Donald Trump's remark on illegal invaders.
Yes.
Donald Trump's caused quite a stir with some of his new statements.
Yes, so the quote from Donald Trump was, he said this and the following in one of his rally speeches. He says, and I quote, "If your constitutional rights have been violated, we will defend you. If you have illegal aliens invading your home, we will deport you," end quote. That was what Donald Trump said. Now, I think he's got his words mixed up there, former President Trump.
No.
He said, that wouldn't be like him, would it? He said, if you have illegal aliens invading your home, we will deport you. Mistakenly saying that the people who've had their homes invaded would be deported. Yep. So Andy Roddick's reacted to that. Quite active on Twitter at the moment, Andy Roddick. So if I get invaded, Roddick reacted this way on Twitter, and I quote, "So if I get invaded, I also get deported, ? Do I get deported if a legal alien invades me? What happens to the invaders?" Roddick said.
Well, if the illegal invader invades you and you're able to get invaded, then the Americans don't want you anymore because you're weak. Donald Trump only wants strong Americans. So then the illegal alien becomes a legal citizen because they were able to beat you.
Yes.
I thought that was obvious.
Yes. He's very vocal on Twitter at the moment, Andy Roddick. He's a good pundit on the game. A lot of what he says makes a lot of sense. Including that. I don't know about his pickleball reaction before, though. I think he took the bait on one there.
Yeah, pickleball is not harder than tennis. That's it for the news this week. We've just got the housekeeping as normal, so some upcoming podcasts. Tomorrow I'll be doing an MMA-focused podcast with Jake O'Driscoll and Ash Williams, who are both... Jake O'Driscoll is a SmartB ambassador. He'll be competing at Subversion on Saturday, as will Ash Williams competing for the belt against Ali El-Kir. I think it's a lightweight. I can't remember what weight belt it is. But anyway, one of the belts, championship belts. That's going to be a really interesting one for me. Jake O'Driscoll is my all-time favourite Australian Jiu-Jitsu competitor. I've always been too shy to walk up to him, so I can't wait to...
That'll be a good one. I'll have to watch that one.
And also next Tuesday, not Monday, because I've got to take my dog to the groomer in the morning. On Tuesday, Mitchell Pearce will be in to go over the games from the weekend, Rugby League as a whole this year. And we've got to remember the questions we had planned to ask him, like, does he think Panthers would have won with Jerome Luai on the field?
Might want to ask him about this approach that Parramatta have made him to actually play for them.
Yeah. I think he went, nah, I'm right. Don't forget to sign up to SmartB to get the tip of the day and your daily customized notifications, all your news, fixtures, results, and tips to your inbox. SmartB Racing Update will be back this week. They didn't do it last week because it was the Easter long weekend. And don't forget to follow at SmartB app on all socials, and also at Back a Winner, I think, is the other one I meant to mention, but I'll remember to put that on the housekeeping next time. Have a good weekend, Dan. Let's see if both of our teams can get up on Friday.
Thanks, John. Yeah, have a good weekend, mate. Hopefully our teams can have a win against the odds this weekend.
Not likely. And goodbye, producer no one. Bye.
See ya.